So first thing on our lining agenda is the slip pocket. So I've got my long piece here. I'm using non-directional fabric because I'm using the accent fabric that I used on the outer of the bag. If your accent fabric is thick, or like I've got a Harris Tweed one, obviously you can't use it on the lining as well, so you would need to use the lining fabric for the accent pieces in the middle of the bag. So take your slip pocket piece and make sure that if you're using directional fabric, it is the right way up. And we're just going to flip it over so it's now wrong side up. And from the bottom edge, I am measuring and marking 6¼ inches. Now what I like to do is just do little snips. They don't have to be big. Because we're going to fold this by bringing the bottom edge up. Now obviously you can't see those lines anymore that we've just made, but you can see the snips. Like so. So that once you've got your fold, and you folded it at the marked snipped lines, I'm going to press this and then top stitch it. Like so. So I've got my top stitch line here, and I'm going to flip the piece over. From this top edge here, measure and mark 1½ inches from the top. Now the next step says to unfold like so, and then bring the fold up to meet the lines here, like so. And what we want to check is if we bring in this side piece, that they are the same height. So you can see here that they are the same height. If for some reason there's gremlins and this is different, just adjust it to match. As long as your pieces are printed out correctly, they should match. So I'm going to give this a press, and then if you want to, you can base stitch down the sides just to hold everything in place. But once I've given it a steamy press, I know that it's not going anywhere. There we go. So I've given it a nice press, and then I'm going to bring in the sides. So each front and back of your lining has a right side piece and a left side piece. So what we do is take your right one, and you'll notice that it's angled on the outsides and straight here. I'll flip it on, match up the edges, and then sew them together. While we're here, I'm also going to do this one. The pattern says do one at a time. But I'm going to do both, like so. I'm going to sew down here using seam allowance, and sew down this side using seam allowance. There you go. I've sewn them in place, and then what we need to do next is unfold them. And then give them a press. And after we've pressed them, we can top stitch. Basically the top stitch is to keep them open so they don't just do what they want to do. I'll give them a press and I'll top stitch. I am top stitching in a nice dark colour so you'll be able to see where it is and I can show you exactly. There we go. You can clearly see where I've top stitched. And since I've started doing my linings this way, I find it so much quicker. And look how neat that is. Right, and we can move on to the second part. That's just done already. Slip pocket's done. So the zipper pocket is constructed with 4 pieces. Unzip. So we've got an upper zipper. Start to check the names. Upper zipper, a lower zipper, zipper lining, 2 of. So we're going to start with the lower zipper piece. And I've got my number 3 zip. Mine is larger than needed because I buy mine in bulk and they're all the same size. Also, I find it easier using a larger zipper and you don't have to keep moving the zip out of the way constantly. So starting with the lower, I'm going to put my zipper facing down, right side down, along the top edge. So if you're using directional fabric, make sure it's the right way up. Now for the next part, I'm going to switch to my narrow foot, which I use as my zipper foot. I've never been able to use zipper feet. So you may want to switch feet as well for the next part. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to base stitch them together right along the edge, because our seam allowance for sewing the zipper part together is 1/4 inch. So generally when we baste it's at 1/4 inch, but this needs to be smaller than that gap. So a couple of mils is good, but anywhere within that 1/4 inch is perfect. So base stitch them together for this first step. There we go. So you can see what I mean. I've gone to the edge, not right along, but it's within the 1/4 inch. Once you've basted, grab one of your zipper lining pieces. Again, if it's directional, make sure it's the right way up. I'm going to put these right sides together. Match up the top edge because the zipper lining is longer. We're going to trim it up after. So you want to match it with the edge of the zipper, make sure the sides are matched up, and then sew these together using our 1/4 inch seam allowance. There we go. So sew them together at 1/4 inch, and you'll see on that side I've got my basting line and my 1/4 inch line. So what we do, we unfold these and then refold them so that they're now wrong sides together, and give them a nice press. And once they're pressed, we can top stitch alongside this fold here, this seam join, like that. Grab your remaining lining piece. I'm going to put these on top of each other. So again, you want the top edge of your zipper lining to match this raw edge of the zipper. Make sure the edges, nothing's wonky, they're all lined up nicely. And again, we're base stitching these together, same as we did before. There we go, so that's basted in. We've got our 3 pieces sewn in already. it's easy to forget this one. So we've just got 1, 2, 3 at the bottom. So you've got your zipper upper piece now. Directionally, you want to be the right way up, because we're going to flip it so that it's now directionally the wrong way up. It needs to be level with the raw edge of the zipper. Again, make sure that these are all in line, and we're going to sew them together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Like that. Then what we're going to do is press this one up, so just this one, and then again, if you use directional fabric, it will now be the right way up. So once we've pressed it, as we did with the bottom, the lower piece, we're going to top stitch. So press, top stitch. There we go. So just check you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. And you will need to trim this because the one lining piece is slightly longer. It just makes it easier in the cutting out process if they're both the same size and then they're not mixed up. But again, we need to make sure it's as long, it is the size of the side pieces. So you can draw a line and use scissors, whichever you're happy with. Something like that. And because I've also used a longer zipper, I'm just going to trim mine off like that. For the next step, you do want to do what I've done and bring your zipper into the center so it doesn't accidentally get sewn into the side pieces. Which we are grabbing now. So we're going to do exactly the same as what we did in the side with the slip pocket. So make sure that you've got the right ones. You want the straight edges together. Put them on like so. Sew them together using seam allowance, and press them open and top stitch, just the same as we did previously. So that's the zipper one all done. So I just need to do the lining gusset, and then we can construct the lining. So I told you, lots of pieces, but it goes together super fast. So grab your 2 lining pieces. They are angled because we don't like baggy linings. And what we're going to do is sew them together. You see this angled edge on this side? I'm going to sew them together on this, so it's the shorter of the 2 short ends. Sew them together using seam allowance. And then what we need to do is open them up after we've sewn them. Push the seam allowances to one side. So whereas on the outer we opened up the seam allowance, we're going to push them to one side and then top stitch them in place on the side we've pushed them towards. So it doesn't matter which way, but top stitch. So I'll do all that fluffing about and then I'll show you. I'll just top stitch the one side of the seam. So once that's done, we can start doing some construction. Now, exactly the same process as the outer. We need to find the bottom, the center. The linings is a lot easier because you can literally just pinch the cotton and mark it. Like so. And the center of the gusset is obviously the seam, not the stitches. So we'll start with the zipper side first. So right sides together. I haven't basted this. If you want to baste them so all the pieces aren't flapping about in the wind, feel free. And I should also say that if you haven't changed your zipper foot back, please do. Please feel free. Oh, crikey. Bring that round, match up the shape. And then we match up the curves. Like that. And same as before, I'm going to sew it this way, around here, using seam allowance. This angle, just think of it as a guide. Don't spend ages trying to get perfect corners. I do more of mine as more of a swoop. Yeah. Is just so that we're reducing the size of the lining so that it won't be so baggy, but we keep the seam allowance the same, because personally I'm not a fan of increasing seam allowances. I always forget, so at least this way we keep it the same and we end up with a nice fitting lining. That is the theory. There we go. That is one side sewn in, and I am going to trim the seam allowance now. So again, I'm taking about half off. Like so. And we're going to do the same with our other lining side, but we're leaving a gap for turning. So I'm going to still clip it as I did before because I want it to be even. then I'm going to remove this clip just to remind myself that this is staying open. So basically we're sewing only to the seam, so this join here, so down the side to this seam, down the side to the seam. We're leaving the whole of this bottom flat edge open. Do remember to back stitch here and here, because when you turn inside out, if you don't back stitch, you'll pull the stitches out. So we're going to sew them together and leave this open. There we go, and that is our lining complete with turning gap. If you do what I do sometimes and you've completely forgotten the turning gap, sew over this bit a few times as if you were back stitching in here, and then you can unpick in between without worrying about pulling stitches when you turn it through. Done that more than once. So grab your outer. The light's not very good, as I said. We've got a storm and it's so grey. And I've got my lining complete. I've turned this one so it's the wrong way, right side out, but technically it's the wrong way around. And I've got my zipper pocket here. If you look inside your outer, this side's got the flap on it. The pocket needs to go to the flap. Then we match up our corners. Open your seam allowance. Open seam allowance. And match up the seam. Or seams together. Like that. And I'm just going to put a couple on the flat sides, the long straight sides. Now what we're going to do is sew the outer and the lining together all the way around the top using seam allowance. So whatever works for you. My old machine had a removable bed. Ugh, that was a word. A removable bed. So I could just slip it on and sew it that way. But this machine doesn't, so I have to actually sew it from the inside. Whichever way works for you, it's all good. There we go. I have top stitched them together. I'm going to pull them through. I generally pull the flap through first, then push in the corner of the outer, keep pushing, just like that. Just tidy up those curves. Don't worry about closing the turning gap yet, because we've yet to put our lock on, but we need to tidy up this top edge so that we get a true idea of where the closure needs to go. What I'm going to do is roll this so that the edges look even. because we don't want to see any lining from the outer, so just roll it in. So when we top stitch around the top of the bag, we're going to do it with the flap and the connectors up out of the way. Keep an eye on your rings, especially if you've got large ones like these, so they don't accidentally get caught. But we're going to sew around here. So flap and connectors up out of the way and top stitch all the way around the top edge of the bag. So I have top stitched all the way around the top edge of my bag, and I'm going to start installing my closure. Funny story, I was going to do a thumb lock but didn't take into account the fact that this would be really thick and it doesn't fit into my thumb lock. So it is now a flip lock. Emmeline always comes with an extra screw, which is super handy. So I've got my cutting mat. Take that one off because it's distracting me. And I've got this nice and level. I want the lock to sit somewhere, I don't want it too close to the end, right there. So what's that? So that's the bottom of the lock is like an inch from the end, but feel free to go whatever you're comfortable with, but I think that looks good. Now I've got this level on the cutting mat here. I'm just going to grab a different ruler. And I'm hoping that the light isn't too glary, because obviously I've lost the lighting. Whoops. Well, we're just going to have to deal with the fact that it's shining. So I've looked at where I want this roughly, and I'm going to make sure it's even. So I'm using, there are lines to make sure the flap's level, and then my quilting ruler to make sure this is level. And that looks, I reckon I'm happy with that. But I'm not going to use this part to draw my lines. I'm going to use this part. Triple check it. And drawn the marks. This part is obviously the bit where this goes through, and then these are my screw holes. But if you look on here, I actually have to cut out a different shape because all of that needs to go in the hole. These are leather hole punches. and I have one that is the perfect shape for this shape. So I'm looking at this, and the hole needs to be cut just on the outside of where the screw holes are. So if I place it on there, just to the outside of the screw holes, making sure that the rectangle that I drew is within this gap, I can punch one hole there, one hole there. I'm going to do that off camera because it is super loud, and then we can move on to the next step. There you go. So done my hole. I've just got a scrap of paper because I need to glue, because we've got all these raw edges. I just need to put some glue on them. I've been using this Mod Podge just because I've got tons of it, but no glue spreader again. If you're doing another lock, obviously please feel free to fast forward, skip this. While I put an obscene amount of glue on, I'm just trying to get it in all of these layers. And yes, I am using a screwdriver. Oh, poops. I'm not screwing them in all the way. Just most of the way, and then what I'm going to do is line it back up on here. And double check that it's level. You can see that it's not, and all I can do is just nudge it level. There we go. And flip it back over and do the screws up fully. I like to grab a scrap of foam and just post it through the hole. Yeah. So hopefully you have gone away, you've done whichever closure on your flap. And then we need to do the bit on the body. So I recommend a hand towel. It's very easy to over close the bag when it's empty and then put the lock too tight. Release then. This way you are simulating a stuffed bag. So, close your flap. You'll see the sides to check whether it's even. And the good thing about this one is I can actually measure or mark. Ooh, that was terrible. Through the hole. Depending on what lock you've got, you might need to do a little peek, or with this one I would actually put the body part on and then see where the prongs touch and then mark those. This is basically where my body part needs to be. But what I'm also going to do is cross my fingers that this seam was central and just double check. That looks pretty fine to me. Mine has a backing plate and prongs, so they go in marking which holes here. Lay this on. This is all erasable fabric marker, so we're good. And I'm marking my prong holes. I've used a different colour one just so I can tell the difference. Now, find your turning gap and move all your lining out the way. Unpicker. Watch where your hands are and mark any holes that need to be on or in your outer body. Feel free to obviously erase the marks. I haven't. Then through the hole, you can see the prongs, put them on. Like so. And I like to protect the lining with a piece of duct tape. I'm just going to cover it over those metal parts there. Give it a good press. We'll just check that everything's right. Actually, I think I prefer that to the press lock anyway, so that all worked out right in the end. So once you're happy as Larry, pull out your lining. Roll or fold, a roly fold the raw edges in to the turning gap. like that. And then we're going to sew across the edge to close up our turning gap. You might want to pick a thread that can be hidden better, but this one you can see better for you. But this is why the turning gap is on the front of the bag, so that when you're looking in, you can't see it. Even on that side, it's still nice and tucked away. Once that's closed up, there's your outer done. Now, let me just quickly say, if you wanted to put rivets on, have a feel. Your side connector comes to here. So ideally, if you want a rivet, you follow. I like to use a quilting ruler. Again, apologies for the glare. There's no fancy technology here. And make sure the lines are in line with the connectors, and I'm measuring 1/2 inch down. 1/2 inch down means that it is supporting the bag with the connector. It's nowhere near the edge of the connector, and that's a good distance. So if you feel that you need a bit more, it's there. So we just need to add our strap that we absolutely made earlier, and we're not totally cutting the camera and making one now. Be right back. So I've just grabbed my strap that I absolutely didn't just make. I did. I totally did. Now, you will need your strap slider. You might have one that looks like this. Or, because I'm using faux leather, you might have a variation of a wide mouth strap slider, which is what I'm going to use. This is perfect for the thicker fabrics. Now, choose an end of your strap. You might have one end that isn't so, I don't want to say perfect because I hate that word, but this end isn't as hot as this end. So I'm going to hide this one with the strap slider. Now, if you're using just a regular one, just slide it over the middle bar. If you're using a wide mouth one like this, it needs to make an M, when you put it through the middle. If it's the other way, it's going to be the wrong way. So if yours is angled, it needs to make this shape. You can measure this so that if you measure 4 inches up and fold it, you'll have a nice 2-inch fold. I say go with whatever works for you. If you've got this wide mouth slider and you want to sew a box, you're going to need this little extra room to move your foot around. On this one, if you're just using a rivet, feel free to scooch it down and have less of a fold. I'm going to use a rivet, but in a moment. I'm just going to clip mine for now. Just for visual purposes, I will put a rivet in there. So, bag, left side. Mine looks like that. I've got the fold here on the outside. I'm going down. Ooh, it's hard to do and stay on camera. So I've gone from the inside of my D-ring, and then bring your end up and weave it through. Like so. So when you pull it tight, the raw, well, it's not raw, but you know what I mean, the end of the strap is enclosed and you can't see it. And you'll see what I mean with the strap slider. It is now, it's the right way. And making sure there's no twists. This time we're going from the outside in. And again, this is personal preference. Feel free to measure from the end, 4 inches, mark it so you've got the even fold. 1 rivet, 2 rivets, sew a box. Absolutely up to you. But that is Sydney. Just as nice as that. Obviously the one in the pattern is styled differently, but as you can see, it can be styled many different ways. Whatever works best for you. Please do go and check out the video on the different closures so you can decide which one works best for you. I'm all for using up whatever's in your stash. So at the minute, I've got a ton of press locks. So most of my bags at the minute have got press locks on them, except for when we don't plan ahead and we can't actually get the press lock on the end. We use a flip lock, but I actually really like that one on there, so I think it was a good choice. But there we go. Any comments, any questions, please pop them below. Once you made it, please do show me, because I like to see them. Tag Sydney Satchel in your makes. Tag me too, Crafted by Leanne, and let me see what you make. Come on over to the Facebook group. We're a chatty bunch. Anyways.